This episode made me cry. The very first episode came close, but this one actually did it. In this video, I will be talking about the fourth episode of Prehistoric Planet, Ice Worlds, which I think was not correctly named, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I will be going through the entire episode, so this video does include spoilers, and it was actually recommended to me to rename these recaps as opposed to reviews, and I think that was a really good suggestion, so that's how we're gonna be moving forward. But in the weekend, I will be doing like a proper review of the entire series, which will not include spoilers. It will just be my review, my star rating, my favorite episode, all of that stuff. So if you want to see that or just see these recaps for all of these episodes, including tomorrow's finale, then subscribe to the channel. The episode opens with a dromaeosaur, and it's not really specified which species of dromaeosaur, and that is something they've done in previous episodes, but they really repeat it a lot in this particular episode. There are 3 animals that are only named by their family name and not the actual species name, which was a little maybe disappointing, I guess, a little irksome maybe, but it doesn't detract from the overall story. So we have this dromaeosaurus is on its own and it's hunting like insects because every little bit counts. But later on, as is said in the narration, they need to team up to catch bigger prey. So 1 becomes 2 and then 2 become 3. Not in that way. It's just a group of 3. And then they go to hunt hadrosaurs. And again, it's not named which specific species of hadrosaur. The hadrosaurs are making their way through this snowy world and they come across a river that they have to cross. And this is where the dromaeosaurs would have their chance to sort of pick them off and get their prey, get their meal, which would last them through the icy winters. So initially when the hadrosaurs are crossing the river, you know, they're doing it orderly, they're very organized, they're very tentative and cautious, they're being very safe and responsible about it. But once the dromaeosaur come down from the cliff and start to put the pressure on the herd, like panic breaks out and they all start crossing the river with less than desirable effects. We specifically focus on this one baby who gets swept up by the river's currents and gets dragged downriver, and it was so sad seeing the mother follow it along on the side of the river, and I really thought, oh no, this baby is done for. Gosh darn it with the baby murder, Prehistoric Planet. But fortunately, the baby managed to like crawl his way back up onto the icy riverbank, and he is saved and he's reunited with his mama. And then I thought, oh dang, but now they're isolated from the rest of the herd, so maybe the dromaeosaurs are coming after them. But no, they go back to the herd and they continue their journey. And the dromaeosaurs were not unsuccessful in the sense that one of the hadrosaurs drowned in the river and washed up so they can feast on his flesh. And the next shot is this one, and I thought to myself, well, that doesn't look particularly icy, does it? And no, it doesn't. And to be perfectly honest, what we just discussed, like the scene with the dromaeosaurs and hadrosaurs, that was the first 7 minutes of the episode. That was all snowy and icy and very appropriate for the Ice World title. But the majority of the episode is not icy at all. It actually mostly takes place in pretty lush forest. They're Arctic forests, so you know, we're not like in the tropical jungle or anything, but we are not in an icy world. And I just thought that was kind of weird since the episode is named Ice Worlds, so I really thought we would be focusing on survival in the snow and in the icy conditions, but the majority of the episode is not like that. So I would personally say that the titling of the episode is a little incorrect, actually a lot incorrect, and I would have proposed that they named it Polar Worlds, because that's accurate. The entire episode takes place in the polar regions, and it could also be a reference to polar opposites in the sense that the ice worlds are kind of the polar opposites of the other areas that we're going, like volcanic areas that we'll be visiting in the episode. In this Ice Worlds episode, we actually only spent the first 7 minutes in ice and snow and the last 7 minutes in ice and snow. The next dinosaur that the story focuses on is the Ornithomimus, and they have gathered on like this island in between the splitting Delta River to make their nest. So they dig like these little craters as is described, and then they fill it with foliage. And these are all males, by the way, and the females will come in later and they will pick their partner based on who made the best nest. And the scene sort of continues with a male who is a latecomer, so he's struggling to like find a good place to build his nest because the other males are sort of like, hey, this is my circle, this is my personal circle, that is your personal circle, please do not let the circles touch. They're like, please keep your social distance, thank you very much. But they're not being very polite about it. So this male sort of has to make his nest on the edge of the river, and I thought that would sort of come into play later on, but it doesn't really have any consequences for him. And because he is a latecomer, he is like struggling to find foliage quickly to fill his nest. So what he does is he steals foliage from the nests of the other males who have already fully built and completed their nests. By the way, the Ornithomimus look absolutely hilarious with like this tuft of feathers on the top of their head, which it looks like a hairdo, like a fancy hairdo. And I thought that was really, really funny. I really liked how they looked. Their story isn't really continued. We don't really see if the late-coming male was able to build a sufficient nest to seduce a lady. We don't see any of that. We actually move on to Olorotitan, and again, not in the snow, not in the ice, quite the polar opposite, you might say. They actually go to a volcanic area to nest because the soil there is warm, so it sort of acts as an incubator for their eggs. But yeah, definitely not an ice world. And the baby Olorotitans are my favorite part of the episode. And yes, we are talking about the episode that includes the battle between the pachyrhinosaurus and the Nanuqsaurus, which comes later. But this, it was my favorite. The babies are so cute, and we really spent quite a bit of time with them. We see them hatch, we see them like nuzzle with their mother, which is totally adorable. The mother comes to bring them like food, so she has like a mouthful of grass or something, and she comes over and she just drops it onto the nest and buries her babies in grass, and then they sort of pop up out of the grass and like, yay, food! And it's so cute, and it continues with the babies playing like soccer with the empty eggshells, and it's just absolutely adorable, and it just had me smiling the whole way throughout. Now, the location where the Olorotitan have chosen to nest is like presented as this ideal warm wetlands, as it is described, and there's like this time lapse of them going across the field and eating horsetails, and it's kind of funny when you first see the time lapse. They walk really funny because it's sped up, and it takes you like a second to realize, oh, I'm watching a time lapse. At first I thought, wait, why are they moving so weird? But yeah, so it is presented as like this ideal landscape. Again, very not icy, but that does bring a problem with it, and that problem is mosquitoes. And this was where the tearjerker started. So the mosquitoes, they hatch like millions at a time, and they more or less attack the hadrosaurs. They are a pest. They are insufferable. Like, the adults are so distracted by all of these mosquitoes just biting them that they can't even stop to eat or drink anymore. So the herd has to move on from this area. They have to get away from these mosquito pools, and that is easier said than done, because for the babies, the mosquitoes, there are so many and they are so relentless that the babies actually lose a significant amount of blood. And there's this specific baby, and you see him being like swarmed by these mosquitoes, and it's so sad. And it says in the voiceover, our beloved David Attenborough, he says, the herd has to move on. If the babies can't keep up, they'll be left behind. And one of these babies is left behind, and that's where I was starting to have my emotional breakdown. So the herd, they move to a higher altitude where the wind sort of prevents the mosquitoes from attacking them, from following them. And so the herd has made it to like the top of this hill where they're safe from the mosquitoes. And the voiceover is talking about how the babies that have survived so far will likely make it into adulthood and all that stuff. And all of a sudden you hear like this cry coming from the distance, and the mother turns and she looks, and cresting the hill is this little baby Olorotitan that got left behind. And at this point in the episode, I literally exclaimed, "Oh my god, he made it!" And that's when I started to cry, because I was so happy that he made it. I don't know, man. Like, this series is playing with my emotions. And once they're reunited, the herd moves on, and so does our story. We're moving into another definitely not ice world. We're actually going into a story about forest fires, which I thought would be part of the final episode, tomorrow's episode, which is actually about forest. But no, and actually this entire scene plays out completely unexpectedly, because what I was thinking with the shot of like the dinosaur and you see the reflection of the flame in his eyes, we saw that in the trailer, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be this dramatic forest fire trauma and a lot of animals are going to die because of the forest fire, and it's going to be this horrible situation. But it goes in a completely different direction. So what the story is that the forests are actually so dry and the air is so literally electrified that lightning storms set fire to the forest. And instead of following like that sad route where a lot of animals are like choked to death by the smoke, the story follows a troodontid. And again, the specific species is not named, it's just described by the family name troodontid. The troodontid is described to be one of the smartest animals alive at that point. And what he actually does is he makes use of the forest fire for his hunting strategy. So he is really clever. What he does is he grabs like a little twig, I suppose, that is on fire, and he uses it to sort of direct the flames. He specifically sets fire to parts of the forest to force the animals of the forest into certain areas where he can then catch them, and he is successful in catching his prey. I thought that was a really interesting story to tell. Again, it was really unexpected, definitely not the direction I was going in. It was actually more of like a positive approach to forest fires. So I guess I appreciated that. I thought it was a really interesting take on it, and it was really interesting behavior as well. It's very intelligent, but I'll accept it. I really liked it. Then the episode moves on to the next species. Again, not in an icy world. We stay in the forest and we follow the Antarctopelta. The story of the Antarctopelta in this episode is really mellow. We first see three of them, three brothers, and they're just moving along the forest floor. They're nibbling a little bit, and then they go find shelter in the same den where they have been sleeping for the past while as they've been growing up. But of course, as they are growing up, they're getting bigger. So when they reach their den, not all three of them can fit inside. Only two of them can fit inside. So the two of them, they basically just shout at the third one, "Go away! Get off my lawn!" And the third one is like, well, okay. So he goes off on his own. He goes on like this little journey to find his own territory, which is part of growing up. And he ends up finding this really ideal cave for him to rest in, which has like this ceiling of glowy fungi. Initially, when they showed like the glittery ceiling, I was like, oh, I want to be there. And then they said, yeah, these are fungi. And I was like, yeah, no thanks. No thanks. It looks cool though. But yeah, the little Antarctopelta has found like the perfect territory for himself. And that's really all there is to the story. I was kind of getting a little bit nervous because when he finds the cave, David Attenborough says in his narration that he's not the first animal to have found that cave. So I thought, oh no, he's gonna go into that cave totally unsuspecting, and there's gonna be like some sort of big carnivore in there who's like, hey, look, food delivery. But no, it was just the fungi, and he goes and has a little nap, and it was really cute. After that, we finally go back into the snow for the pachyrhinosaurus and Nanooksaurus story. So it starts with the herd of pachyrhinosaurus, and it is described that it's like the end of rut season, but some of the males are still fighting to like get a little bit higher up into the hierarchy. But the head bull is like, stop this BS right now, it's over, save it until next year, boys. So the herd is in this forest and they're feeding on the last leaves that they can reach and the last fruits that they can find. But of course, as we know from the trailers and the clip that was released, they will be hunted by the Nanooksaurus. And what they do is the herd doesn't stay in the forest, they actually go out into the open so they can sort of circle around them themselves and protect themselves against the Nanooksaurus. And we see one of the Nanooksaurus get absolutely bodied by one of the pachyrhinosaurus. So it was starting to look good for the herd. There's like this blizzard that swoops in and it creates a temporary truce as it just becomes about surviving the blizzard at that point. And as soon as the blizzard lifts, the hunt continues, and the Nanooksaurus managed to create enough panic that the herd breaks formation and they actually start to run away, and that is exactly what the Nanooksaurus wants. Because as shown before, they couldn't really attack them while they were like in this protective circle. So at this point, the herd is on the run, the Nanooksaurus are chasing them, and one of the bulls is not able to keep up with the herd. At a certain point, as is also described in the narration, the pachyrhinosaurus realizes, okay, I can't keep up with the herd. The only thing left to do here is to turn around and face the Nanooksaurus and try to fight my way out of this. So that's what he does. He just sort of, all of a sudden he stops and he turns around and he's like, okay, come and get it, come and get it. We get this really brief shot of the rest of the herd and you see one of them stop and turn around, so I thought, oh, maybe the rest of the herd is gonna go back for the bull that got left behind. But no, unfortunately for him, that does not happen. He gets surrounded by the three Nanooksaurus, and they actually take him down quite easily. I was kind of hoping that there would be a little bit more of a battle, where he would stand a little bit more of a chance, he would get in maybe a couple more headbutts, but they take him down quite easily. And that is the end of the Ice Worlds episode. Please let me know in a comment down below what you thought of this episode, and I cannot wait for tomorrow's episode. I'm so excited for what they have in store for us for the finale. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, enjoy Prehistoric Planet.